So I have a question here. Isn't it good to discern who to be vulnerable with first though? To build trust before exposing the soft underbelly of your heart. There are people who hear vulnerability and take advantage of knowing others' fears and use it as power over them. We have to have some sort of protection or be seriously hurt. Is it more like a gradient or more solidly defined for you? So in this question, they seem to be really asking about, because we can have this bias towards vulnerability as the right thing. I need to learn how to be vulnerable, and I share myself vulnerably with everyone, everywhere, all the time. And there's kind of like two possible directions that we can go here when we talk about vulnerability. One is, so vulnerability is actually exposing ourselves. When we're in a vulnerable position, by the definition of the word, we are in a place of weakness. We are in a place where we can be taken advantage of, where we can be hurt, where we are undefended. We don't have protective layers. And so from that place, there's a very real need to be discerning about who, what, when, where, and how we share our vulnerability. Who am I going to share myself with, right? Are they a safe person? Are they going to honor my vulnerability? And this is talking about the vulnerabilities that leave us in that state of being defenseless, right? And we all have them. We all have them. So I'm going to talk about a different form of vulnerability after this. So is this person someone safe who is going to respect, honor, appreciate, receive my vulnerability in the form that it really deserves to be received? Then I also have to consider what am I going to share? Am I going to share something that is going to leave me off balance or off center? This can be placing too much responsibility on another. If I share something with you that actually leaves me feeling off center, I've given you responsibility for my experience, and this can be really destabilizing for both of us, right? Now you're in the position where if you say the wrong thing, I'm going to feel really hurt. I'm going to feel really impacted by that. So you now start to have more responsibility over my experience than I do. So I need to be intentional about what I'm sharing, and that it's not going to be passing that responsibility over to you. It's going to be revealing myself, but not necessarily in a way that is taking myself way off center and putting myself in your hands, right? And this kind of alleviates some of the original question. Where am I going to do this? Obviously, are you in a place where you feel safe, where you can ground yourself? If you feel disoriented, if you're in a shopping mall or if you're out in a big public setting and you share something revealing about yourself and it doesn't quite go well, obviously it's going to be really hard to orient yourself again. Whereas if you're in a safe environment where you feel like you can be grounded in your own life, it's obviously going to be easier to share more vulnerable things, more personal, more deeply kind of stuff that's sitting more deeply under the surface. How you share that is going to be important. Part of that was addressed in sharing in a way that's not destabilizing. If the person I'm sharing with, are they actually in a place that's receptive? Am I just blurting it out to them and now they have to deal with it? Or have I actually checked in for consent? Are you able to hear and receive my vulnerability in this moment? Because if I haven't checked in for consent, and you react to my vulnerable share, that's really on me, not on you, right? I haven't asked if you're able to hear me right now. I may need to vent about something. I may need to share about how challenging something is in my life, or I may even want to celebrate something. But if you're not in a place you can receive that, say, I want to share, a deep celebration of something that's come into my life, but you're actually in a place where you're feeling stressed out about something, when I share that, it's actually going to put you out of discomfort. So I need to check in with consent. Are you actually willing to receive me in this moment? And obviously that ties into when as well. When is the right timing, And we can be in this, especially if we're a little bit reactive or dysregulated, we can be in this almost compulsive state. I know I definitely can, of I need to share my vulnerability with you right now. And you're not even ready to receive it, but I got to get it out. I'm notorious for doing this sometimes. It's like, are you ready to receive this? And the person goes, okay, give it to me. But they're actually not genuinely ready. They're just being accommodating to me. And I share the thing and then it goes pear-shaped. And that's an inappropriate timing for the vulnerability. So we do want to be in definite discernment around our vulnerability. We do want to, when we're exposing and revealing the deeper parts of our heart, we want to know that it's the right timing. I'm with the right person. I'm sharing in the right way. Otherwise, the impacts are going to be unsettling to potentially me and the other person, right? We're going to both be at a loss for it. So that's one aspect. And that really, especially as we're training with vulnerability, as we're learning to reveal ourselves more intimately, we're going to have to practice doing so in a safe enough setting that I can find my center again. And in a way that is titrated, meaning that I'm only sharing to the degree that I'm not overextending myself. I'm not leaning too far and then all of a sudden getting a vulnerability shame hangover. You can have a vulnerability hangover, which is the experience of having shared too much in one go. And then you go, oh my God, I shared too much. And you can't take it back. That's the thing about words. Once they're spoken, they're out. Once the other person receives them in their ear, that's it. You no longer have any control around what happens with those words. And if you share too much, you might have to go into damage control. You may have to take care of it. This doesn't mean we shouldn't share vulnerably, but that it's a practice. It's a skill that we develop, and we develop it with the discernment and nuance and over time. And that's why coming to authentic relating type courses and learning about this in a safe container that supports us in practicing can help us get into bridging that out in the world. Now, the other part of vulnerability here is when we do practice it, in my experience, the more that I practice my vulnerability, the more I'm in that nuanced awareness of sharing in a way that's revealing and exposing myself, right? And the intimacy that can create with others through the connection of sharing and revealing more of my heart. But I'm able to do that, like I know where my center is. And so I don't share vulnerability in a way that puts me off center. This is when vulnerability becomes an incredibly powerful tool. This is when, for example, I can stand up in front of a crowd of 150 people and lead them through some deeply intimate exercises or something. And it's vulnerable to have that much attention on me, but I know where my edges and boundaries are. And even though it's deeply uncomfortable to reveal myself in certain situations, I know what my edges of dysregulation are. So I know when I'm going too far into putting myself off center, and I can stay in my center, and then there's actually an exhilaration inside of vulnerability. And that's when it becomes a powerful tool for connection and intimacy. It's not something that's this trepidatious or tentative, weak aspect of self. It's actually something that creates more connection. And the deepest vulnerability, I often say, the most vulnerable thing I can do is be fully myself, right? And now that's exposing because I can be rejected for who I am. You might not like who I am, right? But it's also empowering because it's so liberating to free myself from the conditions and restraints that have me want to hide parts of myself for fear of not being perfect, or fear of being misinterpreted, or fear of not being liked, or all of these other things. And I can actually open into that. This is where I can say something like, I can be with someone and say, I noticed that I really want to be liked by you. I said this to a friend that I was sitting in connection with, a new friend. And this is a vulnerable thing to share, but it actually allowed our connection to deepen. And it's putting myself on the line, but it's empowering myself in the process. So 2 parts of understanding vulnerability. One is, as we're learning vulnerability, we have to be really discerning and kind of have training wheels. The vulnerability of learning to ride a bike is, if you fall over, you bang your knee. So, and then the other side, so we've got our training wheels on. We're learning what is the right amount of vulnerability, who I share it with, when I share it. We're kind of learning all of these complex things. And they are complex, right, to learn them. And we kind of learn by a little bit of trial and error. We get a little bit wrong, we fix it up, all of that stuff. Then the other side of vulnerability is when you actually have the confidence to ride the bike. And then you can start going towards more and more intense experiences. You can start to go off jumps, or you can go dirt bike, mountain biking, you can go off trails. You start to get confident with using your bike. You understand how to use this tool of vulnerability, and it is a tool. It's a relational tool. It's a way of creating connection, creating intimacy, creating experience through another, through the use of the skill of revealing ourselves and how and when. So you're learning this as a tool. So as you learn it, as you develop vulnerability as a tool, you can use it skillfully. You can use it in the way that it's intended to create more engagement, more rapport, more intimacy, more love, more weaving together, more electricity, more polarity, more turn on. There's a lot of things that can be created through vulnerability, through understanding what vulnerability is and how to use it. Thanks for your question.